From the outside, Seth and his cousin Stephanie looked like just another pair of relatives. They showed up at family dinners together, smiled in photographs, and shared the occasional inside joke at weddings. But anyone who really knew them understood, they weren't just family. They were friends. Best friends. They'd grown up side by side, two kids navigating the same family chaos, inventing their own little world in the process. There were late nights with whispered conversations under blankets, silly promises that they'd always have each other's backs, and ridiculous pacts made in childhood that somehow survived into adulthood. One of those pacts was simple. Seth would always be honest with her, and she'd always be honest with him. No matter what. It was the kind of bond you think nothing could break. But bonds, even the strongest ones, can snap when you least expect it. Stephanie wasn't an internet person. That was one of the things Seth genuinely liked about her. She lived in the real world. She wasn't glued to her phone, didn't spend hours drowning in TikTok videos or chasing whatever drama was trending on Twitter. She didn't know the latest memes. She didn't speak in that strange, rapidly evolving language of internet humor. And she certainly didn't understand how a single video, picture, or phrase could go viral overnight and become part of global culture. Most of the time, that wasn't a problem. In fact, Seth thought it was refreshing. Until one evening changed everything. Stephanie had just gotten news that made her glow from the inside out. She was having a baby girl. The announcement came at a small, intimate gathering of her closest girlfriends. The living room was warm with soft lighting. Wine glasses clinked softly as conversations flowed, the air thick with excitement. Stephanie sat in the center of it all, radiant, practically bouncing in her seat. She took a breath, smiled, and said, "I've picked her name. Karen." For a moment, the room went completely still. Not the soft, thoughtful kind of stillness. This was different. This was sharp. Awkward. The kind of pause where people's eyes flicker, just slightly, checking to see how others react before deciding on their own. Then came the politeness. "Oh, that's lovely. How classic. Beautiful choice." Seth said nothing. He couldn't. Not because he disliked the name itself, he didn't, but because he knew exactly what the others in the room were thinking. He saw it in their eyes, in the way their smiles strained just a little too much. Later, Stephanie stepped into another room to take a phone call. That's when the masks came off. The polite smiles dissolved in seconds. "OMG, that poor kid! Why would she pick Karen of all names? Does she not know?" The comments were quick, sharp, and cruel in a way only whispered gossip can be. Seth sat there, his chest tight. They'd just been showering her with compliments. Now, they were mocking her the second she was gone. And the worst part was, Stephanie had no idea. For the next 2 days, the thought gnawed at him. Stephanie didn't know, not really, what Karen had come to mean in the internet age. It wasn't just a name anymore. It was a label. A stereotype. A punchline for a certain kind of entitled, middle-aged woman who demanded to speak to the manager over the smallest inconvenience. Seth wasn't judging her. He didn't think she was making a stupid choice. But he was worried. If she was going to choose the name, she should at least know what it carried in today's culture. After all, honesty was their pact. A couple of days later, Seth decided to tell her. It was a quiet afternoon. No audience. Just the two of them, sitting in his living room with coffee mugs in hand. "I'm really excited for the baby," Seth began, smiling warmly. "I just want to make sure you have all the information before you settle on the name." Stephanie tilted her head, curious but relaxed. Seth took a breath. "It's just, the name Karen has some negative connotations online. It's sort of become a meme, like a joke, for a certain type of—" He didn't get to finish. Her face changed instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp. Her voice rose, shaking with anger. "Why are you saying this? This is so mean!" Seth blinked, startled. He hadn't expected this. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I just thought maybe you didn't know, and I wanted you to have the context." But she didn't soften. "That's the name I picked for my daughter. And you think I picked it as some kind of joke? I don't understand why you'd say something so hurtful." Her words hit harder than he expected. In that moment, Seth realized she hadn't understood him at all. She thought he was mocking her child, when all he wanted was to give her information. He hesitated. He could let it drop, or he could try again. In for a penny, in for a pound. If she was already angry, maybe the worst thing would be to let her leave without knowing the truth. He pulled out his phone, typed, "Karen, know you're mean," into the search bar, and turned the screen toward her. "Look," he said softly, "I'm just saying there's more meaning to the name than you might realize. I want you to be aware of it, that's all." Stephanie didn't even look. She shoved the phone away, hard enough that it nearly slipped from his hand. "Wow!" she snapped, the words slicing through the air like a blade. Then she stood, grabbed her bag, and stormed toward the door. The slam echoed through the house. Moments later, the sound of her car starting faded into the distance, leaving Seth in a silence so heavy it felt like the walls were closing in. The fallout was fast and brutal. Within days, Seth's aunt and mother were calling him, their voices laced with anger. Stephanie had told them he'd made fun of her baby's name. They didn't want explanations. They didn't care about internet culture, memes, or shifting language. In their minds, Seth had crossed an unforgivable line. And Stephanie? She didn't answer his texts. Didn't return his calls. It was as if she'd built a wall overnight. Seth got the message. He wouldn't bring it up again. Ever. If people whispered behind her back about the name, and he knew they would, he'd defend her. Because if they didn't have the courage to say it to her face, they had no right to say it at all. But deep down, he knew the damage was done. This wasn't about a name anymore. It was about trust. About how one moment of unwanted honesty can shatter something it took a lifetime to build. And in the end, it didn't matter whether Seth had been right about the name. Because sometimes, the truth isn't the shield you think it is. Sometimes, it's the weapon that destroys you. He sat there in the quiet after she left, staring at the coffee mug still on the table, hers half full, still warm, as if she might walk back in any moment and pick it up again. But she wouldn't. Not today. Maybe not ever. In that silence, he replayed every word, every look, every beat of the conversation in his head, searching for the exact moment things tipped from love to anger, from trust to suspicion. He wished he could go back, rephrase, soften the edges. He wished she could see inside his heart and know he had never meant to hurt her. But life doesn't give you rewinds. Only consequences. And maybe that's the hardest part of loving people. You can tell the truth, but you can't control how it's heard. You can reach out, but you can't make someone take your hand. You can be right in facts, and still be wrong in the way it lands. Still, he knew this. If you care about someone, it's worth trying at least once or twice to explain yourself. To bridge the gap before it becomes a canyon. But if they react with anger, if every attempt feels like pouring water into a bucket full of holes, then you have to know when to stop. Because love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes, love is knowing when to let go, not because you stopped caring, but because you care enough to protect both your peace and theirs.